Hello. I hope that you are joining me today. Someone raised hand. Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? Can you see my slides? That's great. Okay. While we are waiting for other people to join, maybe you can share some embarrassing language story, where, and you don't need to tell me when, but where did you embarrass yourself, or maybe some anecdote, if you feel so. So you can share it in the chat while we wait for other people to join us. If you want, or you can just tell me where you're from, and yeah. No one did embarrass themselves in another language. Okay. Okay. UK, a lot of people from UK, Jersey, good afternoon. Well done. Someone is trying to think of something embarrassing, but not tend to say anything. Yeah, I completely feel you. Don't worry about that. Okay. Misunderstanding when an American said they hadn't packed any pants. I thought they had no underwear. Yeah. That is an interesting one. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Mary. Cool. Okay. Dublin. Hello. Cool. Seaford, Kent, London. That is very nice. Anyone outside the UK? Maybe from my countries, Slovenia, Macedonia, North Macedonia. Munich, okay. I don't know German. Okay. Italy, well, super. Oh, Luna. Do we know each other? I think we do. So hi. Okay. Great. Shall we start? As a Brit, I asked a US secretary if she could lend me a rubber. Tricky. Hi, Luna. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Great to see you. I can't see you. I can read you, but okay. Hi, everyone. I think that we are good to start. So yes, a little bit about myself. As you already know, I'm a chartered language professional by CIL. I really do recommend organizations to the organization CIL to all language professionals out there. We have webinars, we have mentors, so please do check it out if you're not familiar with it. I'm pretty sure that you will find that useful. I'm also a lecturer and a cultural and language consultant for a public and corporate sector. I have also an online school for Macedonian and Slovene language. As you can see, I'm very passionate about languages, all of them, not just important ones. I lived in many countries as a child because of my father's job, and I had privilege to experience different cultures and languages, which inspired me to do the job I do today. I just want to remind you, you have chat in the chat, but I'm not going to be able to, to read the chat while I'm doing my talk. But if you have any questions, please, can you put them in a Q&A session there, so I can then easily find them and hopefully know how to answer them. So yeah, that is all I wanted to say, so bye. No, I'm kidding. Okay, we can start. About misconceptions. I'm sure that you already heard claims like, I'm too old to learn a new language, or with this method, you can learn a language in a month. We can all learn a language as babies do. Native speakers need it for teaching. Misconceptions we have about language learning and teaching can block us for learning a language or trying new things. In this presentation, I would like to point out some of them and show you some tricks how to overcome them. Maybe I will encourage some to start learning, but I will definitely lift some teachers' burden off of theirs and their students' shoulders. As a girl who firmly believes in science, I want to say a big thanks to all extraordinary language researchers out there, because without them, we would really think that we are old or not talented enough to learn a new language, or that all those unscientific methods can help us to learn a language. So big thanks to them, big thanks to Language Show today to give me this platform so I can do the presentation, and big thanks to you all joining me to this talk. Okay, let's explore. Only native speakers can teach. Okay, we all heard that. Before I started to translate and when I was at the university, I was thinking that to translate or to teach a language, you need to be a native, even me. Surely you can't translate or teach if you are not, and you need to teach and translate only in your first language. So by that logic of mine, only simultaneous bilingual people living in the two countries equally are able to translate or teach. What a shame that would be, right? No other teachers and translators are allowed apart from the mentioned one, bilinguals. I was also full of misconceptions, as you can see, but over time, with reading books about language acquisitions and also my own teaching experience, I overcome them. Now, I can clearly see things differently, and I want to share that knowledge with you from a bit of a selfish reason, so I can stop receiving questions whether I'm native speaker in Macedonian or Slovene. Yes, I admit that Macedonian is my first language and Slovene is my second. But am I better teacher in Macedonian because it was my first language? As a teacher and a translator myself, even though I'm sequential bilingual and my first language, as I mentioned, is Macedonian, I'm totally capable of explaining some things even better in Slovene. And while I was digging again into Macedonian, because I didn't want to say to students, just memorize it or figure out or to explain some things which were hard to explain before, I knew all of those words, what they meant, and what was the correct way of pronouncing them and using them to put them in a context. But they were really hard to explain them to my students. I studied them carefully so I could explain them. It wasn't just, oh, it's my first language, so I will just teach it. For example, we all know direct and indirect objects or different aspects of the verb. You know when the verbs are different for when you finish the action or you are still doing it. So if you finish reading the book or you are still reading. I can see some of my colleagues teach this way. So to read, pročita, which has its pro prefix, so that means it's done, while čita is still an ongoing action, or in Slovene, berem in preber. One is longer, so it was done because it was a long time, and the other one is still ongoing. But you still cannot know when to use it, right? Or with declension, which means that the ending of the noun change based on the role in the sentence. Some of you are going to remember Monty Python's Life of Brian. Protagonist Brian had to write Romans Go Home in Latin. He didn't know Latin very well, so his graffiti was grammatically wrong. He wrote Romanes and Domus. Sorry about the pronunciation, I know nothing about Latin. When Roman centurion read people called Romanes go to the house, he started to lecture Brian on grammar, similarly to how some teachers still teach grammar today. Use the proper imperative word. That's an accusative case. This is moving towards now. Write Romani ite domum 100 times. Whew. We all remember those 100 times, right, from school. At least I do, I admit. Can you imagine learning like this? It's still better than just getting a spreadsheet with endings in Slovene, because each case has its own endings and own questions which go with it. And some teachers expect from you to memorize them and then ask yourself and guess the right explanation. Or even explain them, as you know that accusative is used when the noun is indirect object in the sentence, but some of your students, they don't know what a noun is. You know the rule. You can recognize the direct object. It's so logical to you. But now you need to explain to someone who has no idea what are you talking about. But at least you are native. It's your first language. I also like this story about learning a language with a native speaker from the book Becoming Fluent. I really do recommend that book. And I'm quoting a lot from that book. I'm just not going always to say I'm quoting, but I really do recommend to read that book. So Edmund Hillary, reaching the summit of Mount Everest. Authors wanted to stress the fact that he didn't do it alone. He was accompanied every step by the way by the Nepalese Sherpa mountaineer Tenzing Norgay. Edmund needed someone who had previous experience climbing the mountain to help him navigate the dangerous terrain. At one point, he even saved his life. They compared that story with learning a language. It must be a team effort. And ideally, the person by your side has already climbed the mountain and can show you how it's done. Unfortunately, one of the most common beliefs when it comes to learning a language is that it needs to be learned from the native speaker. Okay, native speaker can give you the right pronunciation, but learning from the native alone is like being guided up to Mount Everest by someone who was born at the top of the mountain and is shouting directions down from the above. The sounds may be pronounced correctly, but that won't help you find firm footing among the loose boulders and treacherous crevices. What you need, this guy said in the book, it's a language Sherpa, a non-native speaker who struggled with the language and who conquered it. This may seem counterintuitive, but it's not to suggest that learning from a native speaker is useless. Far from it. I'm just trying to tell you that it needs to be just the native speaker. However, this is much to be said for learning a language as an adult from someone who knows the terrain. Also, there is another story about Richard, but I think that we can all recognize ourselves. Richard studies French in so many different places, but the best French teacher was someone who was born and grew up in the US, a person who had fallen in love with France and French and learned the language as an adult. The teacher understood how Americans approach French, and therefore he knew how to teach French to Americans. He understood fully why students made the mistakes they do because he had made them as well. As a result, he was able to give his students insider strategies for avoiding these mistakes. Adult language learners look for patterns, relationship among the sounds, words, phrases, and figures of speech in the target language. They don't learn the language as babies do. Therefore, It's important for them to learn the language from someone who can help them think strategically about it. Non-native speakers who previously struggled with the language themselves often have insight into the language that native speakers do not have. Thinking about all of this and reading all of this, I don't know what to say to my students learning Macedonian with me. Am I better teacher in Slovene? I know for sure that I can find a way to explain to my students the hard grammar bit. If you think teachers need to be native speakers because they know, they have knowledge of the culture, that is kind of wrong too. Because if we say that Macedonians and Slovenes are different people with different characteristics, what am I? As a bilingual, what country do I represent? I left Macedonia when I was young. I do not live in Slovenia anymore because I'm based in London. And culture also changes. Did you meet two people from the same country who behave the same way? Maybe for certain patterns, like people from England would stand in front of the door of the restaurant unless invited and seated, and Macedonians and Slovenes would grab the first available table without any hesitation. Or if we say people from X country are very kind, well, they were kind to you and people from your country, but that doesn't mean that they will not change their attitude towards people from other countries. All I'm trying to say here is to not generalize things, but when something is with the culture, we want to generalize. And sometimes my students will say, oh, Macedonians are very direct, and they will express their opinion freely and without any hesitations. Well, some of them might, some of them don't. I like to say that really I don't like to generalize. Culture and language definitely are not separate things. We need to have culture when learning a language. But I would like to present some key dates, their history, different food, etc. And I really avoid to say, oh, Slovenes are hardworking people, Macedonians are lazy, or Slovenes are very cold and Macedonians are really warm people. And sometimes I think that culture can be also learned by authentic text by anyone. It doesn't mean to have a native speaker. Okay, we have another misconception. So you will learn while listening to the radio. This is a very interesting theory, and my students always ask me, oh, I can just listen to the radio, some podcasts, and then I will learn the language. I don't need to write or whatever. Okay? Yes, at the beginning, it is very useful to get the melody of the language, but later it becomes a lazy method. Listening while you cook, during your laundry, it's not productive. It is just giving you a false feeling that you did something. Done for today. When Anna asked me if I practiced, I will say yes, I was listening to a radio. That is shallow learning, because the process is shallow. There is no deep thinking or understanding of the language. And to learn something, you need to make a contact with the deeper level of processing that will create a more durable representation in long-term memory. Breaking the words apart into the meaningful components would be a deeper task. You need to learn how to listen actively. You need to catch the vocabulary to find out what it means to write it down. How many times did you learn and memorize something just by hearing it and you did not understand its meaning? Poof, it's gone. Well, you need to check the meaning of the word to put it in a context so you would know how to use it properly. Just don't translate it with Google Translate, but also check it with some target language dictionaries and check the examples given. You will see the word in different contexts and you can remember it better. And you can use it in a different social situation. When you listen, try to listen and then paraphrase it. You can also parrot back the listened things, but trust me, this is also a shallow process. You can enter the same situation in a different way because you meet different people along the way. So with paraphrasing, the thing you can handle more people and you will be skilled to react in a different way. With parroting things back, you can handle just that one specific situation. Studies, find out that if you are listening to the text, you concentrate on new words and vocabulary. And when you try to recognize, the text is already moving forward. So while it works for the younger generation, maybe the older will struggle with it. The same is with reading. When we read aloud, we are concentrating on pronouncing things rather than thinking about them. So try to use writing and listening at the same time, especially helpful because some languages are tonal. So that means you can say the same word, but it has different meanings depending on the tone you said. Listening is a very, very important skill. So embrace it. Don't be just a passive listener. Find some videos, find some podcasts of your interest, and try to think about the topic. What kind of vocabulary it is used? When you're listening for the first time, try to recognize as many words as you can. It's really interesting once you can recognize the words in the text. Later, you can also find some audiobooks or practice on movies. Well, I'm too old to learn a language. How many times we hear that and think even, maybe we are thinking that. Experts say no, but do we trust them? The pandemic recently certainly showed that we don't. We know that we are old, right? And we know that we are forgetful. The brain's neuroplasticity decreases with age, so we tend to think that we are losing the ability to learn a new language. But trust me, we also have some advantages, even though we are older. According, again, to the book Becoming Fluent, evidence suggests that adults can learn new languages even more easily than kids. Children may be superior to adults when it comes to acquiring the accent, and they don't have learning anxiety. As we mentioned before, it's a myth that adults should learn a language as children. Their brains are different, and also you cannot learn another language the way you learn the first one. That is another misconception, because that can be frustrating. A better option would be for adults to build on their considerable cognitive strengths and to not envy or try to mimic children's language learning. Here we need to touch on the confirmation bias that happens when people give more credence to information that confirms their beliefs, while at the same time ignoring the information that goes against it. By ignoring contradictory feedback, we lose the opportunity to make changes that could drastically improve the probability of success. When we meet an adult who tried but failed to learn a foreign language, confirms the belief. Meeting an adult who succeeds is written off. That is confirmation bias. While learning a language as an adult, some things can be challenging, but some others can be easier. Adult learners have larger vocabulary than younger learners. Picking up the vocabulary as an adult is much easier than learning the rules that govern grammar or syntax. This is due to the fact that new words can be easily mapped on a learner's pre-existing knowledge. But older learners are less likely to have good pronunciation, as we said before, or accent, since the phonemes or sounds of a language are picked up more naturally by children. Children also are not burdened with the thought that they cannot learn another language, but adults' strength is really metacognition, to think about what went wrong and why someone misunderstood us. Also, adult has metalinguistic awareness of how language works and not just knowing a language. They know how to be polite, to crack a jokes, to lie, all of that. With learning a language, you keep your brain active, not exercising it because it's not a muscle, but keeping it active. With the language, we learn also a new writing script and also a culture, as we mentioned. It's beneficial for your brain as well. There are many studies which confirms that speaking another language can delay symptoms of dementia. But be careful how to deliver that news to your student, because mine felt old and insulted after that. Okay, it was just one, but still be careful to deliver that information to your students. Along the way, while learning, you can meet interesting people, hear their stories in their native language. Learning a foreign language is much like learning to play a musical instrument. Indeed appears to be a good way of keeping health. Also, as an adult learner, you know what works best for you. Maybe you are good in memorizing, then build up your vocabulary first. If you know that you're a person who needs to see and hear things repeatedly before they make sense, load up your phone with practice conversation. If you thrive in structure and organization, then create diagrams. As an adult learner, you have a gift of insight, something younger learners lack. Adult versus babies. People say that we can acquire foreign language as the babies acquire the first one. Well, babies tend to break a language down through the use of what we call phonemes. These are the smallest units that differentiate two words. Example, rat, bat. This means the sensitivity to phonemes in babies is very high, right? So a slight mistake could result in an entirely different word. As we grow older, our ability to process phonological elements in a language that we grew up gets stronger. However, because we don't require being so sensitive to sounds anymore, our ability to learn a new language can be hard. There were also studies about babies that it's not enough for them to hear the language sound from electronic devices in order to learn the language, but they needed to interact with human speaker. Babies didn't know how to write, so they started with talking. But we already know how to write, right? So we need to use that ability, embrace it. So why would you go step back and learn as babies do? Another misconception is like English is enough. So why learning a language? I speak English, so I can freely travel around and speak English. Yes, we can all admit that English is a dominant language on the internet, is the global language of business, science, a lingua franca, enables people all over the world to connect on personal and professional level. It's spoken by more than 1 billion people, but there are 7,000 other languages as well. Learning one of them is also about expanding your horizons and seeing another culture. Also, it's helpful to break down the barriers between yourself and the other speakers, colleagues from abroad. While English can be used to connect with people, learning another language can help us to have more influence on people. I think that, I gave a talk last year, maybe some of you was on my talk, about Albert Costa, when he argues that we can have more influence on people when we speak in their language. First language is acquired from our family in emotionally rich context, and it becomes infused with emotions. Foreign ones are often learned later in life from textbook, TV, classrooms, so a neutral environment may not activate feelings, they are more emotionally neutral. Explanations in psycholinguistic or bilingualism clearly demonstrate that emotional distance between the first and second language. The language we use are not simply interchangeable vehicles for transmitting ideas. Also, quoting, rather than language itself can change how we think and feel about those ideas. This can go as far as influencing our actions. Part of this research was testing how reading instructions in different languages could predict what people would do. And then the way they concluded, the way you feel about and act on the words can vary depending on what language they choose to deliver the message. So when people heard instructions in their native language, they behaved more emotionally. If you want your foreign listeners to feel, you will be more successful if you don't speak to them merely in English, unless they are native. Foreign languages won't elicit a clear imagination because they are less often associated with deep formative experience. Think about international meetings now. Okay, we all learn the language in the same way. The most researched thing on the internet is about different methods of learning and teaching as well. Most of them are not scientifically proven, and some of them are even scientifically refused as a method which can help you to learn a language. Do we all think the same? Is there no misunderstanding in the world of miscommunication and we all can understand each other perfectly? The recipe to learn vocabulary or grammar is, do we like the same recipes? Some like to add oil, some prefer butter, they are vegans, vegetarians. So do not forget, while teaching and learning, there is a plethora of people from different cultures, understanding, and brains. So you don't need to spend time with the student. So you need to spend time. You need to spend time with the students and see the needs and also way of thinking about different things. Maybe your student is more a person of patterns, organized, mathematical. So you need to find a way, if you're a teacher, to present things in a form of organized spreadsheets, diagrams with logical connection between the terms. If you are more visual, then you will learn better if presented material is with drawings. If you have a group, then it's more difficult to apply all of these things, but you can give these tips and students can organize themselves at home. Students also discover what works for them and try to be open to new things. This goes for students and also for teachers. I would say that motivation is a big part of it, but you can be highly motivated in learning a language and you can still fail. Why? Because you are not realistic. So I really do recommend to set realistic goals and you are not going to be frustrated. Again, the same goes for teachers as well. Do not push your students to fall in love with your language or your culture, but try to introduce some interesting topics, and then you will see if they feel connected, bored, amused, and based on that feedback, you can then select further topics next time and see where the student's own interest will take them. For a baby to learn a language, they have to adapt. They have to start with the sounds, the words, and then with the meaning. It's the perfect step process for easing into it. Unfortunately, when we grow up, our ability to learn a new language is restricted by the fact that we already have one. Our adaptive skills aren't as strong as those of a baby, and so we have the obstacle of our own language that we have to overcome. Naturally, this requires more mental effort than if we were babies. Rote repetition, we all know what is that, is proven to be helpful, but you can flip your cards for hours, days, months, and still nothing. Then you think that you need to try harder and repeat each day. That would lead to frustration and nothing else. Maybe you need to change the method. Maybe rote repetition is not for you. But If you try something else, maybe to not follow this method, maybe you will succeed. After all, I don't know what helped me to learn other languages. Another misconception is you can learn a language in a month. Yes, you can, the cursing one. According to the FSE, Foreign Service Institution, Slovene and Macedonians, my languages, are in hard languages, approximately 44 weeks, 1,100 class hours on average. I'm not telling that to my students. This can be very based, this can vary based on a number of factors, including the learner's natural ability, prior language experience, time actively spent with the language. Probably if you are a Slavic language speaker, you will spend less time in learning those languages. So I will say the quickest way is to immerse yourself completely and take some language course maybe, and do one language at a time. Use the language as often as possible. If your partner speaks, then devote particular time each day to practice the language and speak completely in the target language. So devote some time for 30 minutes maybe and speak entirely in that target language. And again, set realistic goals. 1 month goal can lead to frustration because it's not realistic one. Do measurable goals. By the end of the week, I will learn 10 words, or I will learn some common verbs in the past or present tense. I will learn some polite phrases. Those are measurable and realistic goals. Another one, can we learn a language while we sleep? No, but after a good sleep, yes. Also, in this book, there is a good example from my favorite show, Big Bang Theory, when Sheldon was trying to make an argument that skills are transferable, and Leonard was pointing out that he learned how to swim on the floor. This is funny because we all know that we can't learn how to swim that way, but many people are still doing that in some way. If you want to learn something, just do it. To learn how to swim, you need to go into the water. If you want to learn how to ride a horse, go to the stables and buy one, maybe, and start riding. If you want to improve your speaking, find speakers of the target language and practice with them. Do not just listen to the radio or just flip your Anki flashcards, which really nicely leads me to the next misconceptions about flashcards. Learn vocabulary just by using flashcards. Okay, every language has a large number of words. English, I mean, there are up to 1 million. Native speakers know 50,000 to 20,000 word families. And what does it mean to learn a word? The first step is to recognize what the word is. To know a word means to grasp the general meaning in a familiar context, to provide a definition or a translation equivalent, provide appropriate word association, identify its components with the etymology, complete a sentence, create a sentence, use it metaphorically, and understand a joke that use homonyms, words that sound alike but mean different things. That is how you will know when the word is learned. Okay, vocabulary is more easily learnable with the frequency with which the word is seen or heard. We need to have many meaningful encounters with the new word before becomes firmly established in our memory. Words needs to be put in context because sometimes, especially in my languages, they can mean something different, especially when they are written. Like here, on je pizzo, ali on je učitelj. He eats pizza or he is a teacher. Ostali so ostali, the rest stayed. Nedela in Macedonian, Sunday and week, or weekend can means weekend or cottage in the mountains. So international words are easier to remember. Then we have words which are common and frequently used. And then we have borrowed words and cognates, words, for example, nation. Words that do not resemble words in another language are called non-cognate words. These words are very harder to retrieve than resembling ones. Teachers should not assume that students will always recognize borrowed or cognates in their second language. And again, I really could not stress that more. Be realistic. About 10 to 15 words per week. Also trying to learn some words which you are going to use with different topics. Now, how to do that? Repetition with cards, Anki or other apps, for some helpful. Unfortunately, for others, not so much. Sorry, but there is no perfect recipe to learn a language. You are really going to hate me, but it's the truth. You can hate the scientists, people, researchers. As we said before, what is useful for some will not be useful for others. But if we set up a good base, then students can build on their own. The base is there. You have grammar, again, grammar, sorry. That is another topic I avoid because of yesterday, and I just avoid the grammar bit. You have the grammar, so build your language house and take care it doesn't fall apart every time when you lose track, and we all know that we lose track sometimes because we have other commitments as well. Memorization is required to learn a foreign language. However, listening the text and parroting it back or going through your flashcards all over again place adult learners in disadvantage cognitively. This ability declines with age, placing too much emphasis on rote memory, and that can lead to frustration and can cause adult learners to quit. So I would really recommend to read more, something of your interest, but then expand it. So if you like science, or you just read a scientific text and you focus mainly on them, you will not learn many words for social interaction. I know that some teachers will jump and recommend their favorite books. Mine are about linguistic or grammar, so I would try to avoid the recommendation to my students. They should find something of their interest, find their favorite book translated into the target language, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, I don't know. And the same goes for listening. Do not just read or do not just listen, but think about it. And when you read, when you listen, try to bear in mind to read and listen actively. Otherwise, you might not notice other forms of the word as well. For example, in Macedonia, I can see some people are really confused because the door can change into when it's written the door and not just door, it's vratana or vratava. That depending whether the door is near the speaker or far away from it. Yeah, I know. And then students are really confused because they cannot notice that word written, and they are wondering, oh, what's that word? They cannot recognize that the word is door. So while reading and listening, be aware of everything. Be active. As I said, do not be passive. Don't shower with the language, but take a nice warm bath and soak into it. I know, what are you thinking now? Why go through all of these things? Lady, there are good dictionaries around, but trust me, the lady in front of you is trying to show you the whole process, and trust me, you will easily remember the word this way. And of course, the more often you do it, easier and more natural would become. Also, theme clusters, you already know this, like you can create one theme per week or month, depending on your course. So try to look at the structure of the new word. Is it an adjective? Is it a noun? We all heard about the theory that when you learn, you will learn more quickly if you label the things in your apartment with the target language. Instead of that, try to think about your surroundings. For each thing, there is an equivalent in your target language. While you are in the park, while walking in the park, try to notice things and name them. Then try to associate those words with other words and make sentences. The habit of thinking more deeply about the language will pay the great dividends. Try to paraphrase more. The contrast between a shallow and deep learning. When we try to remember some random numbers or pin, etc. Elaborative rehearsal strategies allow one to process information at a deeper level, more effectively transferring information from a working memory into long-term memory. This includes focusing on meaning. So instead of memorizing some random words, try to paraphrase them and think about how they relate to yourself, for example. Although you may end up memorizing less words with this strategy or fewer words with this strategy, your study will be more meaningful and therefore more likely to be remembered and used correctly. Our vocabulary is determined by the context in which we speak. If you are constantly in science or musical environment, the words relating with science or music will be more familiar and easier to retrieve from our lexicon. And this, if I didn't learn it because I had a bad teacher. Well, do not forget the students' effort as well. So how many times have I heard, oh, you must be a good teacher. Look how good your students speak the language. Well, you didn't meet the rest of the class. I'm kidding. But if you praise the teacher, then you are forgetting the students' work and time they put into that. I would say that motivation and the work you put at home would also play a role in learning the language. You didn't learn to swim just by fluffing your hands, because if it was that simple, we are going to fly as well. And I really like to share this with you. It happened some time ago. Like students said, it is very hard, I can't understand. I feel very old, I'm not talented. I said, did you do your homework? My student said, no. Did you check the lesson again? No. I said, okay, come, I will open your head, put the language knowledge there. Okay, student, I would rather check my materials. Okay, lesson learned. Teachers needs to be patient and student needs to have trust. I really, the last time when I was watching Gilmore Girls, I see that Lorelai was trying to learn fishing from a book. And when Luke tried to help her, he brought a small pool instead of going to the lake. I think that you need to start with small expectations before you jump to bigger ones. I think that my students, they're just like, oh, we want to jump to bigger things, please. But you need to start with small one. You need to crawl before you can walk. So it's the same when you do exercise for your body, but you are working with your hands and not with your legs, and you are complaining, oh, this exercise doesn't work. Okay, I'm done. I hope that this talk provided you with some information that encourage you to reflect on your teaching or learning a language. Language learning process is affected by many factors, and teachers or learners don't always have control over them. But a better understanding can lead to better results. And if you stop learning even a couple of years ago, trust me, you didn't forget everything. Things are there. You just need to find a way to start again, and you will see that the progress can surprise you. I thought that I forgot my Ukrainian because for the past 15 years, I didn't speak it, but working with Ukrainian refugees since March this year, I can see how much I still remember. Many of the examples, as I said, are from the book Becoming Fluent, How Cognitive Science Can Help Adults to Learn Foreign Language, and books from Albert Costa. Some of them are also my experience. So some of the books I used, and I recommend especially becoming fluent and bilingual brain. Also, don't forget about Pinker, how languages are learned from Lightbourne, and Spada has also some good tips and examples for teachers. But also, if you're a student, you can put yourself in teacher's skin so you can see how much work is needed. And cartoons used are from this book as well. So if you want to learn with me, or you want to connect, please do let me know by email, Telegram, Bird, while you are learning how to fly with them because of some crazy method out there. So thank you, everyone. I will check. Oh, there are so many things in the chat. Okay, I will check the Q&A first. Oh, can you please write the title of the book? Probably I answered that, Becoming Fluent. Let me show it again. So this is the first one, Becoming Fluent, How Cognitive Science Can Help Adult Learn a Foreign Language. I really do recommend this book. Sometimes it goes into details, but sometimes those details are really helpful, so you can learn. Okay. I will just check the chat. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, Steve Pinker. No, Steve Pinker, Steven Pinker. Okay, can we get your email? I think it was in the last slide. Okay. If you want to have my email, it's just like Anna, my name and surname, and there is a dot, anna.ilievska@gmail. So you can write me. Okay. You said, thank you. Someone used Macedonian. Thank you very much. That's great. You said many things I have experienced during my teaching languages. Thank you. Yes, I think that we all do. Thank you. Thank you as well for listening to me. Really enjoying this. Very interesting. I really thank you for finding interesting. Really good presentation, quite interesting. Okay. I don't think, are there other questions? I can't see. Okay. I think that we are done. You don't have questions, so that means that I explained it really well. I'm kidding. But if you want to ask a question, something, I don't know, later pop it in your mind, you can always write me an email. You can always write, and I will try to let you know what I think about that. But do not ask me some difficult questions, please. I'm kidding. There are no difficult questions. Okay, thank you all of you, and have a nice rest of the evening. Enjoy the talks, and see you. Убаво е што имаме репрезентација за Македонија. That is nice that we have representation about Macedonia. Well, it was about language learning, but maybe next year it will be something about Macedonia. But thank you very much. I can't see the name. Perikan Sado. Thank you very much, Perikan. Yeah. Okay. Have a nice evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk, and see you. Bye.